Today's interview is with Frank Tedeschi. I've known Frank for a couple of years. He's done some work for me, and he's doing work for my upcoming supplement, Dark Mythos. He's a good guy, very smart, done a number of things. His interests are pretty varied. We talk a number of topics throughout this interview, so if you think this might be a bit much for you, I would suggest looking at the show notes and then zooming in on the things that you find interesting. I've been wanting to sit down and talk to Frank for a while, and finally got around to making it happen. So, anyway, enjoy this episode. Hello, Frank.
Hello, Jeff. How are you?
I'm doing quite well. I heard it's sunny where you're at.
It's melting where we are, but yes, it's.
Yes, I think it's melting everywhere in the world.
I have heard that. That's horrible. But I'm here to talk to you, and that's nice.
At least we have air conditioning.
That is true. That is true.
Yeah, so yeah, we got I think we've got a lot going on. I've been wanting to have you on for a while, but I've been slow in putting out podcasts.
Well, it's great to be on. I'm a big fan, so it's an honor to be here.
Well, I'm a big fan of Frank, so that
Oh,
makes
very
two.
good. The next best thing to watching Jeff and Zach talk in person is watching you guys talk on the podcast. So.
Yeah, I've had a hard time catching up with you at conventions. It seems like our paths don't always cross the best.
Oh, yeah. I'm always running around like a crazy person involved in a number of different things. That's what happens when you have a lot of projects, you're juggling a lot. It's like, board game design stuff and running my own games, play testing. It's a lot.
Yeah, even doing some Raptor Ruckus stuff still going on.
Yes, yes. Raptor Ruckus is progressing extremely nicely. We are just about ready to go to print actually with the core book, and the fragmentation campaign book is hot on its heels, and it is looking really, really excellent. Our art director, Derek Now, a good friend of mine, is just crushing it and giving a little love to every single spread across both books. And that's really excellent.
Yeah, so that's if I recall correctly, it's a dinosaur themed Jurassic Park utilizing the Mörk Borg type-ish engine, with the
That's
modifications.
exactly right. So yeah, it's built on the Mörk Borg engine, but we've added kind of a subsystem to it to help simulate the kind of Jurassic Park Predator Prey style gameplay. Um, and so it's really, survival horror with dinosaurs set in the 1990s and all the great, tech espionage and FBI government interference and, uh, humor, the mankind's downfall, the humor of mankind. So it's all kind of wrapped up in this very vibey Jurassic setting.
And it's got some Dino Minis too, or Dino Minis, doesn't it?
It does, it does. Yeah, we there's a whole pack of Raptors that we had done for it, and they turned out fantastic, all modeled. There's a T-Rex and a undead T-Rex as well. And those are looking mighty fine. I've seen them in person and can't get enough. Um, I think they're done by Critical Crafting, and their stuff always looks fantastic. They're really great folks over there. Hoping we can do more. That's yeah, I didn't know I'd be so into getting more minis until I started seeing them. I was like, okay, well, maybe we should do more. These are nice.
Well, I would say that the that project wasn't without controversy, even some pretty deep controversy.
Hmm.
There are
Hmm.
some choices that were made that kind of shook the foundations of some people's world or worldview. I mean, there was a decision that Zach had to make, and he chose dinosaurs without feathers.
Yes, the featherless dinos. So I was taken aback when he first was like, oh yeah, no feathers at all in the whole game, and I was like, well, excuse me, like that's I was so surprised. Um, so my background is that I'm a scientist in my day job, and so I'm a biochemist and RNA biologist, uh, and so which has been really great for working in the lab setting and the paleogenetics of Raptor Ruckus. And this really surprised me. But as we discussed that this is really a product of the 90s and coming at it from an immersive time period, like this was the latest and greatest at that time. And so that's what we're running with. And I was like, okay, that it's a period piece, if you will. So from that perspective, I'm on board, and they look they look great.
Yeah, there's
Uh,
one person who commented that was very displeased and had a quite can't remember the way how he put it, but he it's kind of funny how at least one person who I don't know if he ended up backing or not seemed pretty upset by the whole
people love their
thing.
feathers, and it's what we've learned about dinosaurs and fossils just in the last 15 years is really changed how we think about them. And feathers being one of it. Like I saw this was past weekend at the Field Museum with Sue the T-Rex, and they had one fossil there of I think it was Archaeopteryx, where you can see the striations from where the feathers would have been, and I'm like, well, that's clear as day, even to me. So, but this is the great thing about science is that we're constantly learning more and constantly evolving. That doesn't mean that our, everything we do has to be just like that.
No, because it's emulating a genre. It's not really emulating reality.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, it's like, we wouldn't put iPhones in the 1990s Raptor Ruckus game. So that's a contemporary thing from 2000 now. So yeah, a little bit of everything. But it's your game. It's your Raptor Ruckus. If you want to have all your dinosaurs have feathers, by all means, go ahead. I mean,
If you want
actually, the other thing is that these aren't even dinosaurs. These are genetically engineered monsters, which have had their DNA intermingled and spliced with other amphibians and reptiles and birds. And so, who knows what they
well, maybe
got mixed up
the
with.
mastermind says, you know what? I know they had feathers, but I don't want these dinosaurs to have feathers. Maybe the
Yeah,
guy designed them so that they would fit his imagination of what they should be from the books that he read when he was young.
absolutely. So, you can spin it and write it however you want. It's your game.
Yes, there's infinite realities. This happened to be the reality where there are four Charlie's Angels and Jurassic Park.
Right, right. Yeah. Charlie's Raptors, right? So it could be anything you want.
Oh, maybe that should be a sequel scene.
So yeah, we're really excited for how this has turned out, and we've been discussing the follow-up offerings for Raptor Ruckus now. The first kind of expansion for it, which will probably be announced and coming out around late this year. Um, we have kind of like how the Lost World is to Jurassic Park, where in the Lost World you have the introduction of all these like paramilitary guys from InGen. We want to have something that kind of mirrors that, and so an expansion of uh, military factions and equipment and weapons and vehicles. So both player-facing goodies, but also a whole new selection of dinosaurs and facilities, all wrapped up in some carefully crafted set pieces that really will help these elements shine. And so that's like on my list of things to do. That's near the top there.
Well, interestingly enough, it would seem that the base engine, not that I've really played it more than once, but the base engine seems to not lend itself in that direction where what you guys are able to do is make modifications and make that a possibility?
Yeah, so with Raptor Ruckus, we have a set of mechanics called maneuvers that that are built on top of the Mörk Borg system, which basically gives us more levers to pull without becoming overly crunchy. And one of the things I love about Raptor Ruckus and Pirate Borg and the other Borgs is that they are so fast and easy to teach. And effectively it comes down to, roll 12 or higher. And, most people can even get on board with that. Even my players can understand what that means.
Yeah.
So yeah, lot to dig into. But, keep it simple, keep it streamlined. Don't overwhelm folks.
Yeah, I think that's what it does is it allows you people to get to the game as quickly as possible.
Mhm.
You're not going to have to read through and spend half an hour to 45 minutes to making up a character, or it's just really easy to get into the action. And I think you guys have picked a good, I mean, this whole um, genre is very fitting where you can just drop stuff in and people I think what happens with properties like Jurassic Park is you've already communicated so much information about the world.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the beauty of Star Wars is for an RPG is everybody knows what Star Wars is. You're going to do Jurassic Park. Pretty much
Hmm.
everybody's seen Jurassic Park. They know what to expect.
Right. Yeah. Everyone can immediately visualize what that looks like at the table. And the archetypes that we pick for the classes are, so finely tuned to the characters in the movie. It also makes it very easy. And the gameplay ends up being quite cinematic. So, you're playing as if I always tell folks when I run games that the events of Jurassic Park happened. Okay, so Alan Grant, Ellie Sadler, Malcolm, they all got off the island. But guess what? There were other people on that island still. There were a lot of people. That's you. So this is now that here's where you are. You're trying to get off the island and everything has gone to heck. So that really easily puts into perspective. Like, okay, great, things are still awful and we're still here.
So what sort of mechanics or I mean, I'm sure you went through a lot of different iterations, but I mean, was there some things early on that were put in that were taken out, or were the things that took some time to evolve to make it in?
Yeah. So when Zach and I first started talking about Raptor Ruckus, so he had already been working on it before I had joined up. And when I got brought on, we were discussing the kind of like the core mechanics of. I think that he had in place like a kind of like a chase slash escape mechanic where the the real idea, the core behind it was that you had to put as much distance between you and the dinosaur until eventually it would give up the chase, right? And so you're trying to break line of sight and you're trying to add distance. And this, this made good sense. It from the perspective of certain scenes in the movie, this is exactly what they do, especially when they drive away from the T-Rex and stuff like this. But the more we kind of thought about it and discussed it, we were like, well, on foot, humans will almost never outrun a dinosaur 1-to-1. They're just too fast, and they're built as predators. They're built for speed a lot of times. So, what else can we come up with to be our core mechanic for this? And so this is when we started kicking around this idea of tenacity. So when you have a predator prey situation, like a big game cat, chasing down a gazelle, cheetahs are fast. They're they'll catch it, but the gazelle is nimble and can wear down. The predators have this explosive energy to run and catch and to lunge, but the prey have endurance and they have agility and they can sometimes outwit the predators. And so that we use that as our kind of core mechanics. Like, okay, basically the prey has to last long enough until the predator runs out of steam and gives up. And so we built this tenacity system where each dinosaur has a tenacity number, and the things that the characters can do wear down this tenacity over time until eventually it's like, forget this, and then you can get away. So we do whittle down its resolve to fight and to uh, to hunt you down, and
Yeah,
that
one thing I've also have heard and I think is true is that in nature, like predators do not want to get injured.
right,
And so you talk about tenacity, there's that similar thing too, where if it's not a certain amount of ease, they're going to be less likely to address it. Because if you get a severe cut or a broken bone, as a predator, you
yeah,
could be dead.
that's that'll be it, yeah.
So it kind of
So
does fit in that whole tenacity where you've gone to a point where maybe the predator no longer says, you know what, it's not worth it.
yep, that's exactly right. And you've seen videos of niche videos of predators where they're waiting for the exact right opportunity, and then nothing comes, and they
Yeah.
just kind of walk away. And because they're not dumb. They know when the advantage is in their favor and when it's not. So, but that also allows us to do fun things like velociraptors, especially that have very high intelligence and are harder to wear down their tenacity. So they have a resolve to say like, oh, this prey is still here. I would just have to find it and hunt it down. So the more levers to pull to make things keep things interesting.
Yeah, a lot of creatures too they'll just hang back for a long time and just
Mhm.
wait. Like wolves and such, they'll just like, okay, we'll be far
Yeah,
enough away, but we'll be watching. We'll wait for somebody to mess up.
so it's funny you bring that up. In the game, there's a system called tags that we use to describe and define the dinosaurs, both not only what they eat, but how they hunt and how they forage. And so, there's ambush predators, there's you know, long-term hunting predators, and there's scavenging predators, and so based upon what we know about the various dinosaurs, we went through and made a classification system to do this, which will help give the GMs some idea of how to run these dinosaurs. Because I know not everyone is as deeply ingrained in dinosaur culture as I am, and I understand that. And so I wanted to give folks some tools to say, oh, Dilophosaurus is an envenoming dinosaur which will bite you and then run away, wait for the poison everything to take hold, and then come back and feed on your paralyzed body. And like that's cool, and that's different than just a velociraptor, which is going to be a pack hunter and come at you from all sides, right? So we wanted to kind of make these distinctions clear and easy to run at the table. And granted, I know Dilophosaurus didn't really spit and all that stuff. It didn't have a frill, but as we said before, and this is built upon the 90s kind of Spielberg-esque inspiration.
Yeah. No, that's really cool, and I think that's the kind of things that are helpful for a GM, and especially when they're kind of coached in the beginning. This is part of the spice of this. I think we saw it in the movies where the different dinosaurs did act differently,
Oh yeah.
and so I think all you're doing is they're able to take that and being able to reinforce what they've seen and be able
Mhm.
to portray not just the dinosaurs accurately, but make them a different kind of threat. There's not just always something that just charges in, fights to death, and bites them until the party's dead or
Yeah,
whatever. I mean, it's just like ultimately they're looking for food, and there are different ways they're going about it.
that's right. Food is always on the menu. Especially when you think about these giant, apex carnivores that need to consume thousands of pounds of food to maintain their size. Like, yeah, food is on the brain frequently, I think. But there's also some information and guidance for you differentiate these dinosaurs, how their offspring were they their offspring like animals today where it's like, okay, go, you're born, then you're out on your own, or do they have precocial offspring that follow you and learn from you and are protected by mom and dad until a time in which they can go out on their own and forage on their own. And so, and of course, they all had different habitats. And if you think about dinosaurs as unique and varied and specialized as the animals we have today, you can start to think of different ways to differentiate them even further, especially with the kind of think about all different kinds of dogs and how dogs have their own personalities, and even within the breeds, like they're sometimes they're very special special individuals, and like
Yeah.
can be true for any animal.
Yeah, I've seen some stuff about octopuses and how I think somebody wrote about these three different ones that somehow they had exposure to and how all three were very different. Like one
Oh
was
yeah,
very standoffish, was always trying to escape. The other one just loved to have its turn upside down and have people, rub its the underside. And,
yeah.
it's just like these three animals that just still like really different, even though they're like the same species.
You know, I was talking about this weekend. So we were talking about octopuses. As one does. We were at the Shed Aquarium, and what really shocked me, it continues to shock me about octopuses is that their extreme intelligence, but also are invertebrates. Like I don't know any other invertebrates that have that kind of intellect, and like they're so alien to the rest of vertebrates and, intelligent species that like they're just they're on a level of their own. It's kind of wow.
It is. It is wild. So maybe that's your maybe after the Jurassic Park, maybe you can do a 2000 leagues or 20,000 leagues under the sea.
Mm. Mm. Jack, you're full of good ideas. I like this.
So you also have your own company besides doing freelancing.
Mm. Yeah, that's right. So I run Deadbox Games. It's myself and my friend Derek now, who is our director, our guru. And a lot of times he and I work basically in tandem, where I'll do the kind of project management and design work, and he takes care of all the art direction and visual design and artist management, which comes along with that. Uh, we have done board games together and RPGs together, and it's been a really fun time. The Hitbox games, it started off as my way to publish a board game. So I kind of got the game design bug back in 2015, 2016 time, and made a very boutique board game called Ailstone, um, which is like a which grew out of my Dungeons and Dragons game as my because a friend of mine, he said, Frank, every great fantasy setting has its own game in it. You've got Quidditch from Harry Potter, and Dragon Chess from Game of Thrones, Tack from Name of the Wind. What's your game? And I was like, oh man, that's a really good question. Good question. And just to kind of mess with them, I was like, oh yeah, it's called Ailstone. Ailstone. As a play on words for beer pong, but like a medieval
Yeah.
version. And it's like totally didn't connect. And he was like, oh yeah, cool. You should write some rules. We should play some time. And that really got me down this road of thinking, well, what would that be like? A game named Ailstone that's you can play in the tavern. It's for the common folk. They don't have a lot of money, but they might have a grid that they can carve into a table, and they might have some stones that they can paint on or write on. And so I developed this kind of chess meets Chinese checkers version of this game where you're trying to capture your opponent's ale glass. And it was, and so of course one day, we're playing D&D, and I'm like, oh, you go to this tavern, and they're playing this game called Hailstone, and my friend Jason, he's like, oh, I want to sit down and play a few rounds. I'm like, sure. And I pull out this mat. I'm like, all right, we're gonna learn how to play right now. So yeah, that was the first kind of experience, and so I ended up producing that game myself, sourcing all the components and getting everything printed, shipped to my house, packaged up entirely by me, and then sold out of my out of my garage and out of my basement. And that was a really really great learning experience, and I will never do that again. But I learned about production and material components and dealing with overseas companies and how to navigate all these things.
Well, like I sometimes will tell people when they go through certain things, they like, um, that's your college. Like that's,
Yeah,
you didn't go to college for this. So I mean, it would have taken a long time. So you've got a lot of education in a short amount of time. And it was painful.
hmm
It was maybe embarrassing at times, but ultimately maybe even costly. But at
yeah.
the end, you came out with something that very few people have, and it's the types of things you come out of it are can be very useful for a lot of different things.
You're absolutely right. I think I learned so much from that experience. And ultimately, what happened was putting out Ailstone got me introduced to the other local Cleveland game designers. And so apparently, I learned at that time that Cleveland has an extremely robust set of board and card game designers who are all local here to Cleveland. And so as soon as I learned that, I got hooked up with them. We do meetups twice a month. And now I'm one of the co-organizers for Protospiel Cleveland, which brings in game designers from all over to do a whole weekend of board game playtesting. And it's an incredible community. Absolutely, absolutely fantastic. My every game I've brought to them has been made 10 times better because of the support and influence and feedback I've gotten from this design group.
Do you
So
know you've probably not met Travis Miller?
Travis Miller.
He
Not sure.
blogs the Grumpy Wizard. Uh,
Okay.
he's from Cleveland, but there's also a very robust um, authors group, and the
Mhm.
library system is very big about bringing and
Yeah.
doing. And it's like, I don't know what's about Cleveland, but I think you guys got a lot going on there.
Yeah, yeah. I've saying this for years now. If you are into beer, food, or healthcare, Cleveland's a really great place to be. And now I've learned over the last 10 years that it's also great for creative creative folks, designers, artists, authors, everything. We do. Got a lot of great things going on here. Everyone should come to Cleveland. Come on in.
So, so you said you sourced. So, I mean, you know, some, I'm assuming like what could, so you come up with the rules. So you need, I'm assuming it came with a board, probably came with some wooden pieces that represent your stones.
So interestingly, all right, two things. One, the board. So I thought that using a traditional board where you're using it in the tavern or bar and you're actually trying to capture someone's glass, you probably will get spilled on. And so I didn't want to have a traditional board that would warp and become distorted and would become messed up. And so instead I used a fold out fabric cloth, like cloth board for it. And so I had this, I found a company in China that would print the board design on this giant roll of fabric. Of course, they sent me, 50 different types styles of fabric, and I wanted to find one that was, thin enough that would squeeze in the box, but silky and artificial, like non-cotton enough such that it wouldn't leave creases in it when you folded it up tightly, and that would be like water repellent and wouldn't become all distorted. And so after looking through all these things, I finally found one that was some kind of blend, and had it printed on this giant roll and shipped to my house. And this thing was about 10 feet long, and a foot and a half in diameter, and I had to cut and hem and sew
So
every
let's
single
let's
foot.
let's take it back a step.
Sure.
So you've got a science background.
Yeah.
You've got all these samples.
Yeah.
You have all this criteria. Did you create some sort of matrix and did experimentations, or did you just kind of just were able to go through it quickly?
So I went because I knew what I was looking for. I was able to go through it quickly, but I had pre-written the criteria out,
Okay.
and so I was just like, so I was able to go definitely no, 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 no. Okay, maybe these, and then I tested. I did test them. I got some different beverages, and I did spill test, absorption test. It wasn't scientific. I wasn't taking measurements, but I was taking observations, and so but yeah, there was some testing going on.
Okay,
Um,
so you get this. So the role comes
yeah.
in. Were you married at the time?
Yes,
Okay, so
yes,
honey, there's going to be delivery coming.
yes, yes. So my wife was in med school. This is right before we got married. So she was in med school, and she was working super early in the morning. And so she would, go to bed by 9 p.m. And so I would have like 9 p.m. to 1 a.m. to do all my game design and all this testing and building this game. So yeah, this thing showed up at my house. But here's the kicker is like, okay, well, how do I take this giant roll of fabric and turn it into boards for my game that look nice, look professional? Well, it just so happens that my mom is a master seamstress, and quilter, and has been doing it for 20 years. And when I was like, "Hey, can you help me make these boards?" She was like, "Yeah, no problem." And so she hand sewed, hand hemmed, and hand cut every single board that for Ailstone. We did probably close to 400 of these.
Well, it's a good thing your mother was so generous because this could have been
Yes,
a very messy thing. So you're assuming you,
Deadbox Games owes her big time.
so so I'm assuming that you say hemming, so just cutting it alone, it needed to have something done to keep it from coming apart because it was
Right.
fabric.
Yes. So we didn't want a frayed edge. So it needed like uh, a binding and bonding strip at the end, and then fold over and sewn for each one. That was more labor intense. Well, it didn't help that because of the fabric I selected, it would made it somewhat challenging. But the end product turned out fantastic, and I still am proud of how it turned out. And the last thing I'll say about Yellowstone is that there was no wood components. Because it was called Ailstone, I said, well, you gotta have real stones. and so so I used free backsplash stones that I sourced from like a wholesale distributor. And again, I ordered tons of these stones to test them all for clarity in the writing, and their fragility, and how if they're gonna break or stand up to use over time. And found a handful that I was happy with. So there is a selection of different colors that I was able to source over time, because each game came with enough stones for 4 players, and so 20 stones each. And so when you get the game, it's got a very nice aesthetic and very nice tactile feel for it, which is really great for board gamers. One of the biggest pillars in board game players is the folks who love the tactile nature of the pieces and components. So yeah, it's a heavy game, but it's feels good.
So how many units did you make?
Uh, so 500. I had 500 boxes ordered because that's the minimum number of boxes I could have made. But I think we ended up making between 350 and 400 games to get all together.
So you
And
still
it's
have so you still have 100, 150 boxes.
yep, yep. I
Did you,
and
do you just
I
build a few every now and then and put them for sale, or is this a long-term
well,
plan? Or
I'm out of boards. Boards was a limiting component, and so as soon as those ran out, I was like, sold out, collector's item now. There's well, about once every year or two, someone will be like, "Hey, are you gonna reprint these? Are you gonna do some more?" And I'm like, probably not, but who knows? Maybe I'll bring it back out eventually. Do like a 15-year anniversary edition. So, but after that game, which was super labor intensive, I started designing a number of other board game card games, a lot more simple in their nature, and I designed this game called Goblin Teeth, which was the first game that Derek and I worked on together. And and we started doing Goblin Teeth. It was like, this is the one. We're gonna go to Kickstarter. We're gonna do all the art ourselves and put it out there. It's gonna be great. Um, and as I was playtesting, I would bring it to conventions and playtest with a bunch of other designers at these kind of playtest meetups, and I ended up showing it to uh, Peter Hayward, Bluebeard Peter, as he's known in the board game scene, who's the head of Jelly Bean Games. Terrific designer, terrific guy, and playtested it, and he was like, he loved it, and he was basically just like, "What are you gonna do with this game?" And I told him like, "Oh, we're gonna kickstart it. No, I never kickstarted anything before, but this is what we want to do." And he was like, "You don't want to do that. That's like a whole. You want to be a whole publisher. Just sign it to me, and I'll do it because this is what we do." And I was blown away. I was like, "Oh, I didn't even think about this as a possibility." And so after some discussions back and forth with Derek and kind of weighing our options, we eventually signed the game over to Jelly Bean, and they produced it in 20. I think it came out like super early 2020 before a pandemic. And that game is like the exact opposite of Ailstone, where Ailstone is very very thinky, very strategy, and Goblin Teeth is just chaotic goblin bidding, card stealing fun.
yeah, so it's interesting. I mean, there's the pros and cons, right, of doing it yourself, going through the Kickstarter. All the profits would be yours,
Yeah.
but you're also handing over to somebody that takes care of a lot of the headaches. Will probably you'll get a lower amount per unit or however you've scaled it, but hopefully they'll be selling more units.
Yeah. So looking back 6 years later, I can honestly say, it was the right decision, and we sold a lot more. Um, we ended up doing translating it into another language and producing a bunch of copies of that, and that was very cool. And to be absolutely sold a lot more than we would have had we done it on our own. Did we make less money doing that way? Absolutely. But getting to know Peter and working with him professionally really helped us, network with a lot of other game designers and publishers, and you kind of opening up a door into that world a lot wider than it would have previously. Um, However, we also did learn that after doing Goblin Teeth, we were like, that was super fun, but we really love RPGs. And so we kind of transitioned into doing RPG publishing and design after that. That has been our focus pretty much exclusively for the last 5 years, where we put out a couple of modules on our own. One was called the Adventurers Guild Admissions Office, which is up on DM's Guild. And that's like basically, I designed a one shot that wasn't just focused on combat. It wasn't just like, here's a quest, go to this place, kill some goblins. And so I designed a one shot that is set up like a giant escape room where the Adventurers Guild is testing you. And so they have this like fake dungeon they put together that's filled with like tons of unusual riddles, and you have to find out how to escape this place without an emphasis on just bashing stuff with your sword. So works really well. I've run a ton of conventions, and it's always super fun. Um, and that was great. And then after that, we're like, okay, that was fun, but let's do something bigger, weirder, and just totally unique. And so Derek was like, "Cool, Frank, write it." And so great, I'll just come up with something a good idea real fast. And this led to our first Kickstarter that we did for an adventure module fifth edition called Bleak Sprout. And so this is like oh, you'd probably really like it. It's Lovecraftian horror, like cosmic horror meets Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. So the entire setup is your whole party ends up shrinking down to like 5 millimeters in size, and you have an adventure at this size, and there's like flea folk cultists and this weird fungus that does all kinds of unusual things, and this cosmic worm spreading this necrotic fungus everywhere. There's a spider witch and all kinds of bizarro mushroom infected things, and that we ended up doing a risograph print for it, which was another learning experience. But probably one of the my favorite things that we put out so far.
Yeah, I've not done the risograph. I've kind of thought about it, but that's something that maybe one day, but that's another layer of thinking.
It is, and it ended up being, had we known that we were going to do risograph from the beginning, we would have approached it differently. But
Yeah.
so Derek and I's whole relationship is him being like, we should do this really cool, awesome thing. It's gonna be super expensive. And me being like, let me think about that. How can we do this without absolutely just blowing all our money and losing a ton? And we always end up coming into a happy medium agreement here. And so after we had basically finished it, we were like, okay, we're gonna go the risograph route. And so Derek went back and like redid the art to be risograph compatible. Wow. And this was a huge undertaking. And I don't think either of us really realized how much work it was going to be to convert it to that. That being said, it turned out fantastic. Like it just the entire process ended up being very, very cool. And I see Bleak Sprout, the product, more as like an art book than I do anything else.
Yeah, because I mean you're dealing with two layers, and it's not just like another color, even if it's just another color, but it really needs to be, yeah, it's when it's done right, it's amazing. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. So yeah, that was very cool. And honestly, this is doing Bleak Sprout. I think people connected with the idea of the risograph and the art style, uh, and led to the successful Kickstarter for us. And about a year after that came out, I was bringing Bleak Sprout around to the conventions and seeing if folks will carry it at their booth. And that's when I met Zach.
Oh yeah.
Then I was like, hey, I went up to the WOG-D booth at the time, and I was like, oh, you guys have fifth edition stuff. Will you carry Bleak Sprout? And Zach was like, I saw this on Kickstarter. This is so cool. I have this. And I was like, that's great. Yeah, I'm Frank Tedeschi. This is what I do now. And so it was that conversation right there, bonding over Bleak Sprout, that got me hooked up with him and Shadow Zach, and down the long path to you, Jeff.
Yes, exactly. I think it was Malcolm Gladwell. I can't remember. Was it Outliers?
Hmm.
Have you read any Malcolm Gladwell?
I've not. I've not.
So he's a journalist, and whose his claim to fame is putting things together in ways that a lot of people don't. And like one of the things he looked at was how how do things become viral?
Hmm.
And one of the things he said is there's a connector, and there's some
Yeah,
people who are able to connect large groups of people together, and Zach's the connector.
absolutely. 100%. Yeah, it's great to see how everyone is kind of as the thread always moves through Zach,
Yeah,
which is
the
really funny.
conspiracy, what they call it, conspiracy board.
Yeah, the murder
It'll come to
board.
Zach. It'll always come to Zach.
Yep, that is so true. Uh, so since that time, Deadbox Games has become kind of a boutique, freelance writing and art directing company, uh, where Derek and I work together on Raptor Ruckus with those guys, and then we're also working on Winds of Hell together, and then we're gonna do, of course, Raptor Ruckus follow-ups, and uh, we have a Shadow Dark thing coming down the line as well, hopefully in the next year or so. It's already been written and edited and just going into layout and commissioning art now. And so it's been, he and I have been working on various projects, and anytime that he gets into something or I get into something, we try to pull the other one in. We're
Yeah.
like, hey, you need some art. I'm gonna ask you, Jeff. I'm like, oh yeah, I need some art. Get Derek in here. Let him get in the mix. What I love about it is that he and I have worked together for so long and doing so much stuff. We we have a lot of conversations about the art and the writing and the direction of stuff. And I think that kind of iterative design uh, is a huge benefit for the project.
Yeah, and I'll say that there's a slight amount of jealousy of on my part, actually, the idea that you actually have a partner. So
Oh yeah,
when it's just one person, it's just it can not this is not a woe is me, but it's definitely much more of it would be nice to have somebody else at times handle part of things. So
I know. I fully understand that, and it's
it's,
I feel like so Derek works for DreamWorks. He's a texture artist and working on movies like a Big Shot. And a lot of times he'll get busy with his day job, and it's me and Slack like spinning my wheels, and I'm like, hey, let's work on something together, man. Come on. And he's like, hey, I've got my day job, and it gets lonely very fast.
well, I think the sense too, it's like you can't if for multiple reasons you can't just replace them. So it's not like you're saying, well, this is my, I guess you could say it's my project, but I mean, there's a certain amount of togetherness in this whole thing. So,
Oh yeah, yeah. He's great. He's got a really great keen eye for development and products outside of just doing art. Um, and it's always fun to work with folks too, right? I mean,
I think in general, I think it can be a universal truth that I think everything is better when it at least has contact with at least one other person.
mhm.
Because I think in a silo, we're blind to a lot of things. Or there could just be some great ideas that could be generated by another person.
I totally agree, and I'm definitely one. I have a lot of ideas, as Derek will tell you, for better or for worse. Um, and he's always like, cool, cool, that's great, that's great. However, and he pushes me to really drive out of my comfort zone and into, more interesting paths. And although I hate him for it at the time, in the end, I'm always like, okay, that is better. I'm not gonna be putting down. And it's that kind of support. I'm gonna call it support that,
Yeah.
helps bring makes projects, it makes ideas more than the sum of the parts, right? So exponential additive effect.
Well, I mean, there's a certain amount of when you say support, there's also a certain amount of, I don't think just emotional, but just it there's just a lot of strain in making decisions and doing things, and it's not always simple, and it's at least having another person, and he's biased one direction, and you're biased a little bit to the other direction, but you also have an
Yeah.
understanding that he's not crazy. So, I mean, there's a certain amount of trust that you both would have. And I think that's what makes any sort of partnership, whether it's formal or informal, work out better.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think that you hit on the head with the trust of we communicate well,
Yeah.
and I think that's huge in any kind of relationship, be it a personal relationship or a business relationship. If you can effectively communicate with your partner, that makes everything 10 times better.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've got the Shadow Dark project. You're talking about next year before releasing it.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a long
So
ways away, mister.
I've got some things going on, Jeff. Well, so I that's in addition to the cool Dark Mythos project that we've got
Oh
going
yeah,
on.
yeah.
Yes. You um you give the pitch for Dark Mythos.
Oh yeah. So Dark
What's the
Mythos,
overall vision?
it is coming up. My vision, it's actually a twofold vision. It's binocular vision. Maybe not. I think for me, I really wanted to. Well, Dark Visions was the first one Zach wrote, and it was written and based off of something I wanted to see occur, and that is cults. And I think
Hmm.
the next step, even though we did Dark Devilry, uh, ultimately, really what's fitting next is Dark Mythos, talking about Lovecraftian mythos, and doing it for Shadow Dark. But I think it seems to me that I don't know that we have, maybe you have, but I've not really seen much as far as any sort of mythos treatment done in for a fantasy setting.
No. Yeah, the only thing that really springs to mind is the Dark Ages for Call of Cthulhu. They,
Yes.
they they have they have one book which is about Middle Ages and introducing mythos to that. And there's like it's this one, you know, very moderately sized book, and there's no follow-up adventures for it, and there's no additional information
It's
for
a
it.
fantastic book.
I love it. I talked to them at Origins, and I was like, I want more. Is there anything else that's connected to this? And they're like, no.
So
So
are you familiar with, I think it says it Cthulhu, is it Cthulhu Invictus? There's a group, it's
one.
they run these games at GamehoCon. They have a whole room in one of the hotels, and they run those. It's uh Lisa Fadden and Skeeter Green, and I got
Mm,
to play in one of their games.
cool.
And they run at the whole convention. They'll run Cthulhu Invictus, Roman
That's
Cthulhu.
cool. Yeah, I like that too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
outside of
so
that.
rather than Cthulhu, the Chaosium writing, but as far as like any sort of things for like a fantasy setting that are a fantasy like D&D or Pathfinder or whatever, I don't know that I think they may have had adventures that may have something in it. And I do
Right.
know the deities and demigods of earlier version going way back before it got before they got in trouble for it would have the mythos creatures rise, but I don't,
Right.
there's nothing. And I think part of the problem is in general fantasy set up to be heroic. And I think the further on we go in time, the more heroic the expectation is for the fantasy setting. So my idea was to one is to bring the mythos to a fantasy setting, and also to have adventures that would convey that same kind of, you know, horror or existential threat, or in a way that I don't think we see. I think the only thing maybe kind of close would be the Lamentations. They do some kind of weird
Yeah.
and odd stuff. That's probably the closest. But I didn't necessarily want to involve that direction, but mainly just have a really strong feeling for the mythos.
When you told me about Dark Mythos and specifically that you wanted to go this direction of like dread and horror and like away from not just mythos monsters in fantasy, but really trying to lean into the uh, existential horror weirdness of the mythos, uh, where things are always bad.
Yeah.
I I love the idea of that and really um, use that as the core ideology behind my adventure, for instance, Fall. And and I think that that is not. I've never seen that done in any other products quite like this. So that yeah, I'm very pumped for that.
Yeah, no, excellent. I mean, the adventures that have been written, we're seeing all, in the end, nobody's coming, no player's going to come out of this thinking, yeah, everything's great. It's like,
Yeah,
yeah, maybe we succeeded,
yeah,
but it's like
yeah.
there's a cost to success.
We won, but at what cost? And there's something just so delicious about that.
Yeah, and I think in general, I do believe that a lot of people will find satisfaction in knowing that the outcome isn't going to be, I think a lot of times it's kind of with movies, right? We all certain movies we watch, or especially TV series, they follow a formula, and you kind of know
Mhm.
plus or minus 5 degrees where this is going to land.
Yeah, yeah.
But then there's some movies you watch, and like and especially they don't give away in the like we just watched. Have you seen Colossus with Anne Hathaway?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
So all I saw was the trailer. We watched it, like had no idea where this is going. The movie was I thought maybe it'd be a little bit of ha ha, but it was
Yeah.
really not a ha. I mean, it was it was
No.
just like but the thing is like I mean, I kind of knew how it was going to end, but like the whole movie took me on a trip I never expected.
Yeah,
And it was a trip that was pretty dark. But it was like, I'm glad I took it. And that's why I'm looking for these adventures where it's not going to be, we're watching, like my wife and I love watching Elementary, the series, where it's
oh yeah,
procedural. You know what's going to happen. There's a certain amount of joy in the procedure. You can look around and all the people that show up once early on, you're like, okay, I'm sure that guy is it because
yeah, yeah,
he kind of seems like he's innocent, but he's in the background, and it's got to be
yeah,
this guy. Well, but this isn't going to be that. This is going to be like, or you may end up kind of figuring out which direction it's going to go, and then you're going to have to make a choice on which side you're going, to stand on
yeah, yeah.
and
And
see how that plays out.
yes, I think that even if folks end up seeing the long vision and being like, oh no, there's still interesting decisions to be made at the end to say, you know, what are you gonna do? How are you gonna deal with this, even if it's bad?
And I think in general, I think even though there isn't a lot of, um, as you mentioned, there really isn't. We're providing like five adventures, and these are very much, these are not Call of Cthulhu type adventures that just kind of happen to have Shadow. I mean, this is, they're full Shadow Dark characters going through this. This
Yeah.
is infused into Shadow Dark. So I think that with the examples of the adventures and with what we're providing in the books will be a guidance that people could then take, like normal Call of Cthulhu adventures, and they
Mhm.
could easily look at and reinterpret that with this kind of rubric to be able to convert that in a way to make be usable for the Shadow Dark games.
It's great that you've done this. I really love this concept, and back when I was reading the Dark Ages book, I I kind of fell in love with this idea where playing as these Middle Ages town guards, and everything is terrible. You're not good at your job. You've got like a sword and a shield, and that's it. And you end up getting wrapped up in this like cosmic horror, otherworldly thing, and things are happening which have no explanation. And I love the juxtaposition between this, and because you're just some guys from you're just some town guards having to deal with this next level of events, and it doesn't typically end well. And I, I could see I really wanted to run, or I contemplated writing up like a something just like this. But it's basically an expansion for the Dark Ages book, which says, you're Middle Ages, you're a terrible hero, you're just some dude, and all this cosmic horror things happen around you, and you've got to kind of deal with that, and all the fallout from the townsfolk and the kingdom that goes along with that. And so I'm glad I don't have to do that, and then we have Dark Mythos instead.
Yes, you can just write adventures for this and go ahead
Yeah.
and kickstart them and make your millions of dollars. And
Don't tempt me, Jeff. I still have a few minutes. I'm not, I'm not busy. I will say though that after working on Dark Devilry and Dark Mythos, I'm really sad that I didn't have any work in Dark Visions. Might have to try to rectify that somehow.
yeah, I'll tell you. So that started where I had an idea doing Colts, and it was going to be for Old School Essentials. So I pitched it to
Hmm.
Zach, and he came back and said, like, I'm playing a lot of Shadow Dark, and how about I just do this for Shadow Dark? I'm like, yeah, why not? And he just it's like it just came out, wrote it all, and the amount of time and development was so quick. Like I'm
Yeah.
still shocked at just how quickly that came as well formed as it was. It's crazy.
Sometimes you get lucky and everything kind of falls into place in a reasonable manner, in a reasonable amount of time.
Yes. Yeah. No, Zach, I think part was because he had this going in the back of his mind for a while. I think is
Mhm.
before he came to paper. So I think that's been part of it. So, but yeah, I mean, I think and we'll see how this would do. I mean, would one thing I've not done is done like anthologies of adventures. So maybe that would be something, that was something I continue. We'll see how this goes. But I would absolutely would not be against doing an anthology every year.
So, if you did a dark anthology, and then folks could write for either, Dark Visions, Dark Devilry, Dark Mythos, and put those adventures in there, that could be very cool.
Yeah, yeah. And and on one hand, it's like, from a business standpoint, I've got like a lot of inventory. And I was kind of shocked once I did the math. I knew kind of individually how much inventory I kind of had, but when I started putting all the inventory together, it's like, man, I got so having something that will go back and sell my my old stock also is very is an incentive. So, but no, in fact, no, I'm very maybe that's why I'll just that might not be a bad idea. We'll see how this goes.
Yeah.
We'll see how the love goes. But man, it wouldn't be that big a deal to do. Actually, I could do probably just do two anthologies for a single Kickstarter,
Yeah.
and maybe one's themed and maybe one's no, I don't know. Yeah, that might be worthwhile because I think it seemed like you were able to put together something pretty quickly and pretty very well formed.
Mm.
Like I'm sure I don't want to speak for you, but like doing one adventure or two adventures over a year is not a big deal, but trying to come up with five might be a little bit much. So it's kind of nice to be able to just probably do a short adventure between all the other
Yeah.
things that you're doing.
Yeah. Absolutely. It doing a bunch back to back to back. Me as a writer, I put pressure on myself to make them wildly different. Because there's tried and true formulas that work, and I hate falling into those boxes. And I was like, I just want to do something different and weird, and so I do it, and I'm like, great, I gotta do that four more times. It can be a real challenge.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes if you can create a randomizer, that helps.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. But for me, especially with stuff that's shadow dark coded, I spent a couple of days thinking about what the core idea is and trying to distill that behind a concept. As soon as I have that, the writing actually goes pretty fast because then all of a sudden it's just fleshing out the interesting kind of detail bits. And then any subsystems I end up designing in there because I have a problem with being like, oh, I'm gonna put this weird thing in here, and here's how it works. Here's some more role systems. Um, but I think it lends some unique flavors to settings, especially if you can have it, inform the setting and inform themes and everything. Then it
Yeah,
totally,
that's what's kind of interesting because in one sense, I think the Cthulhian stuff kind of works with Shadow Dark because people are a little bit more squishy in Shadow Dark.
mhm, mhm.
And I think the whole lightness mechanic is huge in Shadow Dark. And I think I don't know that we play to that as much, but I think when you're just dealing with the light mechanic, it tends to make everything about dungeons, which could probably get old after a bit.
Yeah,
So I don't necessarily feel beholden, but I think we've provided enough other bits to make this interesting, um, and feel like Shadow Dark without just making it something that it's not.
that's yeah, because the light mechanic is like a core tenet of Shadow Dark. Um, that can easily be sidelined if you're not careful without and you're not thinking intentionally about it. And I feel like that folks should be. And if you're doing a dungeon, it's a no-brainer. You're just like dungeon, it's light, go. But if you're like, hey, Frank, design an adventure which is going to be a heist in hell, which is inherently filled with
Yes.
fire and light, and I'm like, that's an interesting challenge. How do I introduce light mechanics into this? But
Yeah, and I think in general, talking to, so I don't have Dark Space, but I talked to Derek White, who did some writing for it, and he said what they did for theirs was they're very interested in basically, not necessarily a clock mechanic, but something along the lines of a resource that's going to run out quickly. So in
yeah,
space, it could be your oxygen supply or,
right.
so I think a sort of I don't say a clock, but those I think to maintain the Shadark spirit, sometimes having some sort of limited resource that's burning down is a way of doing that. And I
Yeah,
was thinking you could even do where, at the table, every 15 minutes the clock's going to go down, or every 15 minutes I'm going to roll a die, whatever it may be. I think that can help emphasize it, keep the spirit of it without having to make sure that everywhere, no matter what, there has to be a torch burning.
Yeah, yeah. There's definitely ways to play with the feeling.
Yeah.
Those aren't specifically the light. Yeah. I was able to get her, kind of circumvent that with this Dark Mythos adventure, setting it in a tundra where it only has a few hours of light every
Yes.
day. So even in the village, it's dark a lot. So I was like, yeah, see?
Yeah, and yeah, I'm very excited. I'm really very excited about this product. I think as far as adventures go, I think it's the maps are coming out looking great. The kind of adventures we have, the diversity that we have, I think this is going to be like I say, I'm very excited.
Me too. I love Glenn Maps. He does a fantastic job.
Glenn, yes, Glenn Seal is yes, he is a very consistent performer. I mean, it's just and a great guy to work with.
Love that. Yeah, we wanted. I've been talking to Derek a lot about bringing him on and doing some maps for us. So I'm excited to show him even more stuff in Dark Mythos. Say, see, look how great this.
So what he does, he works. Do you guys use Adobe products?
Mm-hmm.
So
Hmm.
he uses Affinity. So what
Sure.
and he could probably just export to PDF, which would work. But what I do is I have him give me the Affinity file. So that way, because in general, the numbering, I may want to change something about that. Or I think when I converted it from stuff from Shadow Dark to OSE. We also changed the name of places, so I was able to go back in the names and change the on
Yeah,
the
yeah.
map. So I would say that whoever you get, if you can also get the original file, so that you don't have to bother them to, you know, change the tracking between
Absolutely.
two characters in a word or whatever it may be.
That's something that we learned on our Raptor Ruckus project is that we had a bunch of different map and layout folks all working, and then plus Derek, and it was always a gamble of like, who's using Adobe, who's using Affinity, and so finally we broke down, and now we have both now, and so it's like, okay, just give it to whatever file you guys work in is fine, just give it to us, and
The
we'll
nice
sync.
thing about Affinity is it will read the Adobe files fine. I don't know that it won't go in the other direction.
Yeah, yeah, it's a one-way street.
I do think I think you can export to PSD out of Affinity. But anyway, yeah, that's good. You have both. So yeah, depending how you want to do it. But I say that's worthwhile. And what's nice for those listening, Glenn also publishes his rates on his website.
Yeah.
So, it makes it very clear. So, and not very many people do that. So he also does art too, as well.
Mhm.
And he does layout. So I got in a bind once where he even just did layout for me. So
See, it's always good to have. We have a growing list of folks who are like that. We're keeping track of, like, yeah, these guys do art, these guys do layout. You never know when you're gonna need someone.
yeah, because I mean I almost always do my own layout, almost always. But sometimes it's like, and part of the reason is a lot of stuff I do, I don't know if I've never done it before. I don't know what it's going to look like,
Mm,
and I got to play with it. But if something's pretty standard that I've done over and over again, it's very easy for me just to hand over to somebody, say I want it to look like this. Then I'm much more
right,
comfortable doing that rather than just keep telling them no, or I haven't figured out where the art, because normally I don't even place art. There's a lot of things I don't do until I get the text. I really don't know what it's going to look like on the page, and that's really not a very efficient way of being. But it's
well, it's tough. I've seen folks make layout maps before the writing is done, and I'm like, man, how do you parse this really?
so what I did with Dark Mythos, especially for what Jonathan's doing, is I had AI write a bunch of how I wanted things to be, put it in layout, condensed it down to where I need it to be, and then I was able to then tell John, okay, this section is going to be this many words, this section is going to be this many words, this section is going to be this many words.
I see.
And then I was able to give very specific, so that way I wouldn't have to go back and have a lot of issues with layout later on, because then I already pretty much pre-planned how it was going to be. So so some things I'll do it that way. Just create a fake book.
Gotcha. Yeah, and that doing it in OSC or Shadow Dark makes it even easier since they have a pretty standardized, straightforward layout. If you want to get into the Borg space where every page is unique, then
Yeah, I've avoided that so far, so who knows? Maybe I'll fall in eventually.
yeah, you gotta do some Pirate Borg stuff,
Yeah,
right?
well, I was going to do a mothership conversion for my
Mm.
Scoundrels of Brixton, but then I started like it's like yeah, I already got the material. The conversion is not terrible, but the layout's going to be completely different. And it's just like now I've got, you know, probably 2 or 3 weeks of just monkeying with layout to get it to how I want it and figuring it out. It's like I don't have time for that. It's
Yeah.
like, it's like
Speaking of Mothership, have you checked out Father Fog?
no.
Oh yeah, it's their follow-up RPG. It's like folklore horror. Um, they just they had copies of it at Origins, but they ran out before I could get one. But it's free PDF online. You can download the PDF. Very cool. Haven't read too much into it yet, other than first couple pages, but
Yeah, it's smart on their
love it.
part to diversify. I'm sure that they've got a very strong core audience, and I think after coming out with the new edition of Mothership, other than having a you know, I, other than having maybe new zines, I don't know where they would go next. So it's nice to have something,
Yeah,
that
the
they can pivot and make some money on.
absolutely. The Alan Girding from Tuesday Night Games is local to Cleveland, Akron area.
Of
Uh,
course.
so
That's where all the
right,
cool
because
cats are.
we're all here. Uh, yeah, he came to our Pro Spill Cleveland game design meetup this year and was very gracious and gave a little talk. We had a nice conversation with him and his kind of trajectory through the game industry. And he told us all about Father Fog and it's kind of fairy tale horror. And he was like, yeah, they've been working on it for a while, and now it's here, zero edition, ready to rock. Uh, Alan's a really really great guy. Always love talking to him. Um, and can't beat Cleveland locals.
No, no, it's
So,
I think with Dolman Wood going that direction, I think it's kind of and I also picked up it's probably a few years old, The Old Gods of Appalachia. Uh
oh yeah, yeah,
and so I think there is a much stronger interest in turning away from American traditional fantasy to going more to folklore and European, where just things are just in Vaesen, Vossen, however you
yeah,
pronounce
yeah.
it, is also trying to lean more into folkloric horror, which I think is a lot more. Well, I should say it's more atmospheric, but it definitely creates an interesting atmosphere that's different than what we normally consume.
I just picked up the Basin box set actually.
How could you
Um,
not? It's so cheap. It's
it's great. I really like. It's got great lore set up to it. What I really love about RPG settings, and I think that makes them sing and really approachable for folks and really easy to engage with folks, is if you have a unique setting and experience that you can only get from that system, from that game. And this is one of the things I think that Numenera and Old Gods like Appalachia does really well, is saying if you want to play Numenera, like you got to play that game. Like you can't really do it in any other system the way that they do it there. And I think that's really contributed to their success is that they like, okay, here's this totally unique setting, and we've custom built a RPG mechanics that fit into this very nicely, and it's been terrific. And so anytime you can introduce a fully unique setting, um, I think you're gonna have success.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And so yeah, I'll have to check out Father Fog and just see what that is because I'd say having more takes in. I mean, we're also kind of. I think what the Old Gods of Appalachia kind of is. It's also kind of hedging into the Lovecraftian vibe
Yeah,
as well. So it's
yeah,
like these ennoble things, and they're alien, um, and
yeah.
very ancient.
The the art brought me in when I saw the books. I was like, I gotta see this. I must interact with this product. And I was like, okay, how can I interweave these things into my game? But the setting for it is like the 20s or 30s, sometime in like a
Vervassen?
no for Old Gods of
Oh
Appalachia.
yes, yes, it is like the 20s and 30s. Yeah.
Yeah, and then like that's cool. My players love medieval fantasy so much. I don't think I can get them into in the 20s and 30s. And I'm serious. Like, we played a bunch of other stuff, Alien, you're like, that was cool. Can we be medieval fantasy now? I'm like, yeah, I guess. Yeah, sure, guys.
Yeah, it's hard. You can't have it all. I've been pretty fortunate, but we don't play whatever we play. We only usually play for about 6 sessions and we move on. So um,
Mm.
it's never anything for very long.
Do you usually run? Are you GM or?
There's two of us, but there's been others that have ran over the period. So it's been people have been on and off, but so it's been all over. I mean, I've had young people run Golden Sky Stories
Mm.
to which is the strangest RPG. You play Japanese monsters, and but generally it's the monsters are just they're very benign, and you're usually there to help somebody. And it's a very simple thing where like I was a monster that was a foot. It's an umbrella with the monster's foot, and it could be a child's lost, or there's a dog that's missing, or
Yeah, yeah.
and you're there. It's very it's not nothing that I would probably. There's a lot of games like this that I love playing a session or two. I would never want to run it. I would
Yeah,
probably never own it, but they're just a fun experience.
totally. Yeah. Those are good convention games. You get in and experience it and be like, oh, that was
Well,
awesome.
and that's a nice kids game too. The Golden Sky Stories is, I mean,
Mm.
it's kind of almost a Studio Ghibli-esque
Sure.
vibe to it. So yeah, but anyway, I think if it was just medieval fantasy, I get, well, can you spice it up though? I mean, can you like, is it still pretty much we want to fight orcs?
Hey, I can spice it up. My group, I'm running with the same guys for over a decade now, which is really great. Full-time GM for them. And we've been playing D&D in the same setting for 3 full campaigns, each one 3 to 4 years long.
Wow.
And it's different time skips. So like they started here, and then it was like 300 years later, and then it was like 10 years later, and so and now we're doing um in our newest campaign, we actually just started. After saying for years, I'm not going to create my own RPG. That's a fool's errand. You really need something special to do it. Finally broke down. And I've started working on an RPG.
On your own
Uh,
Heartbreaker?
yeah, yeah. So, well, came up with this concept to do essentially something along the lines of Ghostbusters in the Middle Ages. So you play as alchemists, part of the secret society whose whole thing is discovering the lost knowledge of alchemy and using those things in order to banish, capture, and resolve ghost conflicts. And so it's a lot of it is geared towards, yeah, those mystical supernatural things, like how salt works or sage works. Like, that's all real, but it's not magic, it's science. And so over the past year or so, I've been playtesting and getting the rules going. And we started our first official campaign with it just a couple months ago, and so it's been that for the last 4 months, and I can say that they've been very content in a medieval but not killing orcs kind of setting.
Right.
So they're open to it. You just got to know how to pull the right strings and push the right buttons.
Know the limits and ride as hard as you can on the edge of the road.
That's that's right. Well, it helps that they're great role players and they love world building, and I
Oh,
brought them in to help flesh out the system, and they all have that like kind of desire to solve puzzles and fix things mechanics and stuff like this. So
so they're all about
it's
the story. They're all about the fun. They just love the trappings of fantasy
yeah, exactly.
or medieval fantasies. No, that's cool. Why, especially being friends for that long. That's a pretty rare thing. I mean, not like very rare to actually have something like that.
This is definitely a rare gift, and the group has changed, over the years. But we have a core set of guys that have been here the whole time, and it's wonderful. I do feel bad for some of the newer guys who've only been around like a year or two, and bringing up campaigns that
Yeah.
happened a decade ago, and I'm like, that was before your time, and I'm sorry about that, but you know how it is. Old jokes never die.
Yeah. Well, I
So
think we're hitting the time space continuum.
great.
Frank, it has been absolutely fantastic. You want to leave any uh, contact information or company website or anything that you want to push at
Sure.
the end of this?
Yeah. One, thank you for having me on. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for letting me ramble about
Yes.
my life story, and that was really really fun. You can find me on Instagram. It's Frank Tedeschi underscore DBG for Deadbox Games. I'm also on Discord as Frank Tedeschi, and so if you want to know more about Raptor Ruckus or Bleak Sprout or Goblin Teeth, you can find me and message me, and I'm happy to do that. And yeah, I love talking about games, and I'll do it till the cows come home.
So are you related to Susan Tedeschi?
I get that a lot, and sadly, no.
Oh,
Uh,
so I'm not going to get any free concert tickets then, is what you're
I
saying.
I don't think so. There are a surprising amount of Tedeschi's out there, despite it being a more unusual name. But there's a lot of us.
Yes. So, well, anyway, I guess I was kind of hoping that was a yes, but that's okay. Well,
I'm sorry,
you
Jeff,
can't have it all.
but I'd give you tickets to my band's show.
Oh,
I
when are
play
you
the drums.
playing? When are you playing next?
Oh man, we actually we after not playing for over a year, we just did 6 shows in the Midwest. Indianapolis, Chicago, Milwaukee, Goshen, Indiana, um, and Detroit. But now we're writing an album, so we're gonna be cooking
Well, let me
up.
know the next time you guys play. I'll make a concerted effort to make a concert.
That would be awesome. It's always fun to have you guys come out. You can see me get real sweaty. It's a
Yeah.
good time.
So still doing punk? Is that the is it still is it different
Yeah, it's a blend of genres. We're called Lock Tender, so it's like screamo plus post rock plus metal, and it's the only way to really you describe it. Yeah, and I'm not a genre guy. I'm terrible at this kind of putting it into a box, but it's all on Spotify. So if anyone's curious, they can check it out. But very heavy, lots of screaming. Um, but also some pretty parts, and also crescendos and epicness. So
it's got it all.
Yeah. So one of the guys I've been playing with in the band for 24 years is the same guy who's in my D&D game, Jason. So he's can't get enough. Good to have friends follow you around for your whole
It
life.
is. It is. No, can't beat that.
Yeah.
Well,
But
well,
thanks for having me on.
thank you, Frank. And
Yep.
we'll talk again soon.
Sounds good.